Good morning. I'm Thom Knab. I'm president of the National Art Education Association. In my real job, I'm a K-4 art teacher at Dodge Elementary School for 30 years. Dodge Elementary is just outside of Buffalo, New York. I'm very excited and honored to be with you this morning to present at the Online Art Teachers K-12 Summer Digital Conference. I hope in some way I will inspire you to be a champion for art education. Too often we witness art educators suddenly discover they must become an advocate due to school budget and/or visual art position cuts raising their ugly heads. The scrambling begins to determine how to convince decision makers why the arts, and the visual arts and design education in particular, are important and even vital to the educational experience of our students. I advance that often this is too late. It is still worthy of an effort, although it may appear self-serving. Advocacy work needs to be cultivated much before it is needed. After all, we cannot decide to buy home insurance right as the fire begins. NAEA's mission is to advance visual arts education to fulfill human potential and promote global understanding. First, let me talk about preparing the soil and planting the seeds. The most critical action we can take as an advocate is developing a visual arts and design program that is rich, meaningful, and diverse. We can create learning opportunities which are challenging and engaging. We can provide opportunities for students to make decisions, develop a voice, and experience failures right along with successes. We can develop students who can communicate their artistic decisions, critique respectfully, and appreciate and understand the work and ideas of others. The number one product is our students' growth. We cannot become consumed with the creation of pretty, cookie-cutter artwork. The creation of aesthetically pleasing artwork is a goal, but student learning must be the priority. Advocacy, whether we like it or not, is something that must occur consistently and continually. We must begin to bear witness to the value of the visual arts. We ought to claim each and every opportunity to share, celebrate, and recognize the value of the visual arts as it presents itself. This may include events such as school or district art shows. We know the parents will attend, but what soil do we need to till? Make sure Board of Education members, administrators, local politicians, and community leaders are invited and perhaps involved in some way. Make sure the exhibit shares why the visual arts are important and/or why the particular artworks have been created. Feature your work, the instruction, and the work of your students, the learning, in your school and district communications. This might be newsletters, websites, social media accounts. It's important for them to know that you're not there as an extra, but the importance of the work that you do. Celebrate Arts and Education Week in early September. Recognize and participate in Youth Art Month each March. Let me share a handout I created to go home with each child during Arts and Education Week. It includes 3 items: information about Arts and Education Week's creation and significance, art and music activities students could take part in each day of that week, and 2 characters I created to help teach color theory to elementary students. I wanted to make sure it was interactive, educational, and a week-long event. Tending the garden. To maximize the yield of our harvest, it is essential we tend to the garden. I can recall in my youth tending to our family's vegetable garden, which seemed to be the size of Rhode Island. We had to weed, prune, fertilize, water, and repeat. I did not like any of these tasks, but understood the necessity of each. We can accumulate research and resources that can be utilized to support our positions in the future. Search for and gather the latest research that supports the value of visual arts education. Share its importance in and of itself, but in addition, share how it also boosts academic achievement and can positively impact students outside of academics. Continually evaluate and update your resources. We can seize upon opportunities. I will share a story of an opportunity. When I received an award, my Board of Education wanted to also honor me at one of their meetings. I was going to decline as I felt I was suitably recognized at the NAEA convention and felt it was going to be too much. However, then I realized that this was an opportunity for me to advocate for the visual arts. I had the occasion to speak, so I thanked them for their support. I shared some research on the visual arts' importance and encouraged them to build upon what the district was already doing. The meeting was witnessed by those in attendance, but also broadcast virtually. It made the visual arts more noticeable. A second story. NAEA recently created a resource entitled An Open Letter to Superintendents, Principals, and School Board Members. The letter had my signature, but trust me, many had contributed to its creation. I shared it with all the members of my Board of Education and my superintendent. Many responded positively with statements of support for the visual arts. Some noted that they had no idea that I was president of the NAEA. It made me realize that even I have much more advocacy work to do. We can find and enlist allies. We can participate in arts or education lobbying days at the state or national levels. We can display student artwork in government leaders' offices, perhaps give an award, certificate named for that leader. We can consider displaying artwork in local businesses to cultivate allies in the business sector. I created an art exhibit called the Roadrunner Art Walk. The Roadrunner is my school's mascot. I hung student artwork in local businesses' windows facing out to the street. Over 80 works were displayed in almost 20 businesses. The exhibit was featured in the local newspaper. The businesses loved the opportunity. They discovered the value of my art program. They received foot traffic, and I had the opportunity to feature the visual arts to the community. Work with other arts professionals, whether in dance, theater, music, or the visual arts, to create networks of mutual support. Find and work with visual artists within the community. Work with others to discover the art within your communities, whether through its architecture, public art, or even galleries. Create relationships. Harvesting the fruits of your labor. You have created a culture that values the visual arts and have created an educational environment where outcomes are maximized. Now you can elicit support to expand or protect visual arts programs from those that understand and appreciate the value they offer. And because of your preparing, planting, and tending earlier, your yield is considerable. Increased support from parents, Board of Education members, administrators, business owners supporting local budgets, lawmakers and community members showing up to vote in support of school budgets. I would like to share with you 7 tips for the artistry of advocacy. First, obtain the facts, know the issue at hand, and support your position with research. Credible, meaningful research will positively impact the argument that you make. Storytelling is effective, and it's also a great way for individuals to remember what you have shared with them. And on the contrary, learn to listen. Let others share their stories and concerns. Determine where your interests overlap and where you can work together. Know your audience. What you share should be tailored to the individual or group. You can certainly imagine what you might share with a parent group might be different than what you might share with business leaders or lawmakers in your community. Keep it simple, but not simplistic. Make sure that your message is meaningful, but is not too drawn out, and allow somebody to really connect and remember what you've shared with them. Develop allies, build support, and join forces. As we mentioned earlier, in all those different stakeholder groups, it's important to build those allies. So when you need them, they're there to support you, they're there to support the arts and the art students we teach. And finally, spread the news through social media or personal encounters. Brag when it's appropriate. When you or your students achieve and have certain accomplishments, make sure those are shared through district newsletters, websites, local newspapers. Any chance, any opportunity you get, you need to share with the community what's happening and to the level at which you and your students are achieving. Let's talk a little bit about resources available to us and actions we can take for advocacy. In his preface to the 2012 report, The Arts and Achievement in At-Risk Youth, Findings from 4 Longitudinal Studies, former chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, Rocco Landesman, writes, "Students who have arts-rich experiences in school do better across the board academically, and they also become more active and engaged citizens, voting, volunteering, and generally participating at higher rates than their peers." He goes on to note, "I firmly believe, as do I, that when a school delivers the complete education to which every child is entitled, an education that very much includes the arts, the whole child blossoms." In 2016, the College Board indicates that students who took 4 years of arts and music classes while in high school scored on an average of 93 points higher on their SATs than did students who took 1/2 year or less in the arts. In New York's 26th Congressional District, where I live, there are over 1,200 arts-related businesses that employ almost 8,000 people. New York State is home to over 50,000 arts-related businesses that employ almost 400,000 people. And across the U.S., more than 673,000 businesses are involved in the creation or distribution of the arts and employ almost 3.5 million people. These stats are provided annually by American for the Arts for Arts Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. Americans for the Arts also shares from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis from 2015, arts and cultural industries contribute $764 billion to the U.S. gross domestic product. The arts provide a large share of the nation's economy, a larger share, I should say, of the nation's economy than transportation, tourism, or construction. The nonprofit arts industry also generates $166.3 billion in economic activity annually, and all of this translates to plenty of paychecks and taxpayers. Americans Speak Out About the Arts is a 2018 National Public Opinion Survey conducted by Ipsos. Now, I know this is only a survey, but it does give an indication of what the nation is thinking and feeling. In this survey, 91% of the American public agreed that the arts are part of a well-rounded K-12 education. 72% believe that the arts unify our communities regardless of age, race, and ethnicity. And 73% agree that the arts helps them understand other cultures better. These are certainly hopeful figures in the turbulent times that we're in right now. Nearly half of the nation's healthcare institutions provide arts programming for patients, families, and staff. 80% provide these programs because they benefit patients and create a healing environment. Something you could do, you could ask your member of Congress if they are a member of the Congressional Arts Caucus, the Congressional STEAM Caucus, and/or the Congressional Humanities Caucus. You can encourage, even urge, your representatives to support the National Endowment for the Arts Appropriations and to fully fund the Office of Museum Services. You can join your professional associations in your state and nationally if you haven't done so already. By joining the NAEA, you will not only be a part of the largest visual arts education association and all the connections that it would bring, but you will have access to an incredible collection of resources. Let me share some of those resources with you. Resources on advocacy and policy, including an advocacy toolkit, advocacy white papers written by membership from K-12 education right up through higher ed, legislative updates, and NAEA platform and position statements, just to name a few. And let me share a few of these position statements that might be impactful as we chart our educational courses over the next several months. The first is diversity in visual arts education. A second one, visual arts education and social justice. Third one, distance learning in art education. And the fourth one I'll share with you that was just developed this year is reaching learners who have experienced trauma. And let me just read you a small statement from that position statement. NAEA position statement on reaching learners who have experienced trauma. NAEA believes that visual art and design can help reach learners that experience trauma. Engagement in art helps learners develop coping strategies, create a sense of control and empowerment, and build resilience. Visual art, design, and media arts education enables learners to clarify and communicate perspectives, transform personal narratives, and imagine new possibilities when guided by effective art educators trained in trauma-informed practices. Tell me, this is not necessary for students during this time of COVID-19, shelter in place, racism, and demonstrations. We should search out and share the therapeutic effects of the arts, as that is so essential in the world we're living in today. Also, you'll have access to Visual Arts Matter Trifold, which is this one here, that I shared earlier and was created in partnership with the Arts Education Partnership. And this had it tells you some of the outcomes of the visual arts, and as well as indicates the resources right here of the resources, the 11 resources that information came from. So it's backed up by research and solid resources. You could also have access to, also I mentioned earlier, that open letter to superintendents, principals, and school board members. And as well in there, it links you to other resources that the document was based on and that you could also utilize to support what's happening locally or in your state as well. There are resources on research. The NAEA has a research commission, and within that group they also have working groups working different aspects of research, as well as we have publications with solid foundations of research, including art education and studies in art education. And of course, there's opportunities for professional development. We all know that oftentimes the professional development we receive locally in our districts isn't really that rich, or even sometimes directly applicable to what we do in the art room. So there's ability at a lower price than a non-member for attending the National Convention and other in-service opportunities, as well as to attend webinars, which are very frequent and on a variety of topics. And currently, NAEA is beginning to undertake the development of their strategic vision. You can be a part of forging the course of NAEA and its impact on the visual arts and design education over the next 5 years. We need as many voices as possible to help create where that vision should lead us. And of course, there's much more. If you become a member, if you are a member, you go and explore the website, you'll realize how much is there to support you. All of these resources you can use to build and bolster your advocacy for visual art and design education, as well as positively impact you as an educator. We must have our voices heard in our backyards and on Capitol Hill. As professional art educators, we know and understand the essential value that visual arts education holds for learners. But what about others? School leaders, parents, elected representatives, school board members, local media. It's time we bring our knowledge, our voice, to visual arts education advocacy to ensure equity and access for all students. I encourage you to become a true champion for visual arts and design education. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of your conference.